And we are buying your dollar.
Yep.
Okay. There are some items that were created on the first day that are susceptible to tumor. That which was created on the second day is not susceptible to tumor. That which was created on the third day is susceptible to tumor. That which was created on the fourth and fifth days are not susceptible to tumor, with the exception of a utensil made from the wing of an oz and a plated naamos egg. Rav Yochanan ben Nori said, "What is the difference between the wing of an oz and the wings of other birds? Everything that was created on the sixth day is tummy. If one makes a receptacle, in any case, it is tummy. If one makes a bed or a seat, in any case, it is tummy. If one makes a person with untreated hide or papyrus, it is tummy. A pomegranate, an acorn, and a walnut, the children hollowed out to measure sand in them, or they fixed to be the pan of a scale, is tummy, but they have an act that they do not have intent." How'd you make that pomegranate? You just said, "Make me a pomegranate," with seeds and
I mean the image on
yeah,
the email. That's mid-journey.
it looks so real.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you the prompt I said was a child holding a pomegranate shell filled with sand.
I don't know how I can't imagine how it does it. I just
Mm-hmm.
All right. Test for Zion. The beam of a balance scale in a level that have a receptacle for holding metal, a carrying pole that has a receptacle for holding money, a pauper's cane that has a receptacle for holding water, a stick that has a receptacle for holding a mezuzah and pearls. These are tummy. Regarding the law of all these utensils, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, "Woe to me if I say it, and woe to me if I do not say it."
Okay.
Okay.
Tachtis hatzorfin, the base used by smiths is tamei v'shal nafachin tahora. Okay, so what you have over here is basically you have a base sort of which has a wall on it that you're standing in, and that the smith is working on. So when he's working with gold or silver, so he's busy working over there and filing things off. And gold and silver are valuable materials. So any shavings that come off, he wants them. They fall on the floor, and he's going to collect them over there. As opposed to the blacksmith, who's just working with regular old metal. So things that the shavings that come off is like nishkafelig. He's not worried about them. So that's the difference between the two of them, is that one is intended to collect the shavings, and the other one is not. Okay. Mashchezes is a sharpening board. Okay. Sheyesh ba base kibul shemen. So if it's got that little receptacle for oil, it's tameh. V'she'en ba tahora. So the chiddush over here is not so much that it's tameh if it's got the receptacle, but that it's tahor if it doesn't, because you might have had a havamina that since this is a kli that's being used being used for sharpening knives. Therefore, it's you might have thought that, okay, this is a kli that we're using, and Rabbanan might have made a gezerah on it because of the one that does have a receptacle, which is obviously tamei d'oraisa. So the chiddush of the Mishnah over here is that there's not even a d'Rabbanan on that one. Okay. Similarly, pinkas sheyesh ba'beis kibul shava tamea v'she'en ba'tahora. So obviously, if a ledger, you see the picture of the ledger on the 802,
Right.
has got the receptacle for wax. Okay, it's got a receptacle. Obviously, it's going to be tameh. But if it doesn't, then there's not even a gezerah d'Rabbanan on it, which is tahor. Okay, and that's the chiddush. Machatzeles akash v'shvoferes akash. So straw mats and straw tubes. Okay. Now there are two possible usages of straw mats. It's either that it's made for sitting on, or it's made for shade. If it's made for sitting on, then it's going to be tameh because people sit on it. Okay. And if it's going to be if it's for shade, then it's tahor completely. Okay. So now what happens if you have something that isn't designated explicitly one for the other? Rabbi Akiva matame, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri matari. So Rabbi Akiva says that the stam assumption is that it's being used to sit on, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says no, the stam assumption is that it's for shade. Basically, that's why one is matame, one is matire. Rabbi Shimon omer af shel pakuos kayotze behen. So Rabbi Shimon says that they have the same machlokes when it comes to colocynth. What is colocynth? It's a member of the gourd family that is closely related to the watermelon, and its seeds produce oil. Okay, so this refers to a colocynth that was hollowed out and fashioned into a receptacle. Alternatively, it refers to a small bitter gourd, the stem of which is hollow, resembling a tube that was hollowed from straw. So like straw mats and tubes, utensils fashioned from a colocynth or hollow stem tubes of small gourds are not long-lasting. So Rabbi Shimon asserts that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri would argue over the status of a utensil fashioned from the colocynth or the hollow stem tube of a small gourd, just as they argue according to a straw tube. According to Rabbi Akiva, a colocynth utensil is durable enough to be considered a utensil that is susceptible for tumah. Well, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, it's not durable tumah and is thus not susceptible to tumah. Okay, but according to the Tanakama, even Rabbi Akiva would agree that it's not susceptible to tumah since it's regarded as food. All right, now machatzeles kanim v'shel chelef, a mat of reeds or of sedge, chelef, is tahor. So reeds and sedge are both hard, and their sticks are thork. Stalks are thick. Sticks are thork. And they have this, and they're not. Now, there's a bit of a difficult explanation over here, which says that since they are that they are not subject to regular tumah, but they are subject to midrash tumah. But it's impossible to say this because we've already learned that once something is subject to midrash tumah, then it's subject to any other tumah as well. As we see, there's the commentary. Yeah, if you take a look at this, the small print on 805 in the second column. So Rav and Rambam assume that a utensil can be subject to midrash tumah while being impervious to other forms of tumah, e.g. a flat mat that's used for sitting or reclining. This, however, is contradicted by the Mishna in Nida, which teaches that any article susceptible to midrash tumah is automatically susceptible to other forms of tumah as well. So if a flat wooden utensil, which normally would not contract tumah since it lacks a receptacle, is susceptible to midrash tumah by virtue of its designation for sitting or reclining, it's now subject to all other categories of tumah as well. So the Mishnah thus must be talking about a mat that is impervious even to midrash tumah, such as a large one or a small one that was designated for shade, because large mats are generally for shade and small mats are generally for sitting on, unless the small mat was specifically designated for shade. So that must be what we're talking about over here. You've got a reed tube that was cut specifically for the purpose of being for being a receptacle. It remains tahor ad sheyotzi es kol hakachai, because these tubes are usually filled with pith. So you've got to, in order for them to become a proper kli with a receptacle, you have to have hollowed out the whole thing and taken out all of the pith.
So the pith is inside, so they can't hold anything. So once it's removed, then we have
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next chapter. Shida, the bin. So we say that the bin has got a certain minimum, has got a certain measure, but at which stage, when it's 40 sa'ah, we said, once a bin reaches a very large proportions, so that it cannot be moved when it's full, then it's considered like it's connected to the ground. Okay, so it becomes tahor. Okay, so that's so now the question is, how do you measure that 40 sa'ah? And there we have a subtle argument between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai omrim nim deres mibifnim, uBeis Hillel omrim nim deres mibachutz. Okay, Beis Shammai say only measure the interior, how much it actually contains, and Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel say no, the whole thing is part of the weight that's going to be that's got to be taken into account about making it immovable. Therefore, you can measure the exterior as well. Okay, and that's a leniency. It means that the chest has to be slightly smaller before it becomes impervious to tumah.
They don't make any distinction between the fact of measuring with something that's more of a solid than water. Yeah, water there might be displaced differently.
So the question, so basically, Beis Shammai would say, how do you measure it? Fill it with water, and if it's 40 sa'ah of water inside it, then it's tahor. Beis Hillel would say, take the whole thing and put it into a big barrel of water, and if it displaces more than 40 sa'ah, then it's tahor. Okay. So modim elu ve'elu she'ein ovi haraglaim ve'ovi lizbazin nimdad. But everyone agrees, says the Tanakama, that the legs and the rim do not count. So you see on 808, it's got a rim that goes around the edge, and it's got legs that are propping it up. And even Beis Hillel agree that you can't count the rim and the legs in that 40 sa'ah. Rabbi Yossi comes and says no. Modim she'ovi haraglaim ve'ovi lizbazim nimdad ubeinehem eino nimdad. Well, he's not saying that they actually agree that there's no agreement between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai on this, because Beis Shammai is saying you can't measure anything. It's only the interior. But he's just kind of rephrasing the Tanakama's statement to say no. Actually no. It's what they're agreeing about is that you cannot beinehem eino nimdad. You don't measure in between the legs. Right, so the space he says the legs themselves, the volume occupied by the legs, that gets measured, but not the space that's in between the legs.
The rim.
So literally, so if you take the whole thing and put it into water, whatever gets displaced, that's your 40 sa'ah, but you can't measure the area in between the legs. Okay, Rabbi Shimon Shazuri comes even further and says, Im hayu haraglaim gavos tefach. Ein beinehem nimdad ve'im lav beinehem nimdad. He says if they've got long legs, then yes, I agree that that Beis Hillel would say that you can't include the airspace. But if they're less than a tefach, then they're close enough to the body that all of the area underneath is also included in the 40 sa'ah, because it's all so close to the container itself. Okay, the halacha follows the Tanakama's interpretation of Beis Hillel. Okay, now, if a chest has got wheels, so you see over here, there are lots of different ways that you could have wheels, but just take a look at that picture on 813. If the chest is put on wheels and it's got a cover, you see the kimron on top there. So all these things we're going to deal with in this Mishna now. Okay, and it's possible. Okay, muchni shela. So that's the wheel. If this is a wheel that is made to be removed and reattached, okay. So then eina chiburla. So that's not considered a connection to it for tumah. So they contract tumah and are purified independently. So if one becomes tameh, it does not have any effect on the other. And if one becomes tahor, it does not have any effect on the other. And it cannot be measured one with the other to make the shear of 40 sa'ah. Obviously, we're talking like Beis Hillel, because Beis Shammai would say we're only talking about the contents anyway. So talking about Beis Hillel, and according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, because the Tanakama said you can't count the legs anyway, so the wheel wouldn't count anyway. Okay, and it cannot be measured together. And it does not protect with it inside the ohel hameis. Now remember, if you have a kli that itself is tahor, then it can form. Then if it's closed, it forms its own ohel. And it does not become tameh inside the ohel hameis, and it protects what's inside it because it itself is a little ohel. Okay, but the wheel does not get protected by it because it's considered a separate kli. So let's say you've got a little compartment inside the wheel for storing money. Don't know why you would do that, but let's say you did. So now let's say there's money inside there that makes it muktzah. What it means is that the wheel now becomes muktzah because it's a receptacle for money. And if you put the cart on top of it, then the cart is resting on a basis shel muktzah. So therefore, the whole cart becomes muktzah. Okay. V'im eina nishmetis. Now, what happens if the wheel is permanently attached to the chest? Then all these halachas change. Chibur, they're considered one kli, and therefore, if one becomes tame, then the other becomes tame. And if it's large enough, an imderesima, it is measured together with the chest. Of course, this is talking about Rabbi Yossi. Okay, because Rabbi Yossi is the one who counts the legs, as in the previous Mishnah. Okay, and it also helps to protect inside the ohel hameis. So if for example there's something that's there's resting underneath the wheel, it's considered part of this tahor ohel, which protects inside the ohel hameis. And furthermore, because the whole thing is one kli, just because there's money in one little piece doesn't make the whole thing muktzah, because the overall thing is more valuable than the money probably, and therefore the whole structure is not muktzah. Hakamron. Okay, so now the kamron, the cover. Bisman shehu kavua, if it's fixed in place, chiburla, then it is considered a chibur. It's all part of the same kli as far as tum and tar is concerned. V'nim dadima, and also it is measured with it in terms of volume, to make up that 40 sa'ah, to see if it's inherently tahor. V'im eino kavua, but if it's not fixed, eino chiburla, then it's not connected. V'eino nimdadima, and you cannot include its volume. Okay, so now let's say it's fixed. How do you measure that volume? Keitzad modedin also. So how do you measure the volume of that lid? And the answer is Rosh Tor. And Rosh Tor is by drawing a diagonal line, which unfortunately is not 100% clear. So you've got three different calculations of how to of what this diagonal line actually means. So you see, according to Rav and Rosh on the left-hand side, it's based on the diagonal from the front wall that goes up to the roof, because you've got everything that's covered is covered, but what's uncovered and on that diagonal going down, so that's how you measure the volume going up to the roof, is by taking the diagonal up to the top of the roof. According to Rosh and Rambam, different ways of looking at it, but basically it's the same thing, that from the corners of the basket you make a triangle up to the roof. So you don't measure the area under the semicircular part, but rather you estimate it as if it were a triangle going up and down. Okay, if you can see on the diagram over there. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im eina yechola la'amod b'pnei atzma tahora. If the bin cannot stand by itself, it's tahor. Okay, so what is Rabbi Yehuda talking about over here? So he's talking about a small capacity bin, which under normal circumstances would be susceptible to tumah. He rules that nevertheless, if the bin cannot stand upright on its own, but only when its cover is in place, for example, its bottom either is not wide enough to afford it a firm base, or it's rounded at the corners, so the bin would tip over if not for the fact that the cover weighs down upon it and stabilizes it so that it remains upright. He says that if that's the case, then it's not susceptible to tumah. Okay, based on the law that an object which cannot serve as a container without support is treated as if it lacks a receptacle. So since without the weight of its cover, the bin is not capable of containing things because it will tip and spoil its contents, it's treated like a wooden utensil without a receptacle, which is not susceptible to tumah. The Tanna Kama disagrees. In his opinion, although the bin cannot stand without the support of the cover, it is nonetheless susceptible to tumah because it was originally designed to be used together with the cover. And so the general rule of Mishnah 4.1 does not apply to a utensil that is intended to be used with support. Right, and we remember that with the lapid, the torch that's got the pointy base, but it's meant to be put into a bracket, and that we said is tame. So even though it can't stand by itself, but it's meant to be used to insert it into that bracket. Okay, and that's it.
Excuse me. Okay. Keilim,
Yes, Zayin Aleph.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
16.1.
You want volume down?
It's the beginning of it's the beginning of your new volume, I believe.
Why did I put that down? I put that down yesterday.
No, it's the same one that we've just been working with. Eliezer, the one we've just been reading from now.
I thought you meant, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, 16. I'm confused. Okay, all right, I got it. Okay, any wooden utensil that broke into two parts is tahor, except for a folding table, a variety platter, and a folding bench of a household. The Yehuda says also the Magis and the Babylonian code are the same as they. At what point do wooden utensils become susceptible to contracting tumah? A bed and a cradle become tummy when one smooths them with the skin of a fish. If one decided not to smooth them, they are tummy right away. The Rameh says a bed becomes tummy from when one weaves it three bottom into it. Wooden baskets become susceptible to tumah when their craftsman secures their whims and trims them. But those made of strips of palm leaves, even though they did not trim them from the inside, are tummy since they are thus kept. A reed basket becomes susceptible to tumah when he secures its rim and trims it and finishes fashioning its head hanging cord. A case for holding flasks and a case for holding cups, even though he did not trim them from the inside, are tummy since they are thus kept. Small sifters and women's baskets are susceptible to tumah from when the craftsman secures their rims and trims them. Large baskets and large bims are susceptible from when he makes two coils around the circumference. The screen of a sifter, a sieve, and the pan of a balance are susceptible to tumah when he makes one coil around the circumference. A basket is susceptible from when he attaches two rings about its circumference, and the strap basket from when he attaches one ring to it.
Okay. Daled base.
And this is Arachim.
No, Keilim. Keilim Daled base.
What did I do?
The first volume of Keilim.
I'm very confused today. I'm sorry. A barrel that is fractured and cannot be transported with a half cob of dried figs is tahor. A gistra that is fractured and cannot contain liquids, although it contains solid foods, is tahor, since there are no remnants for remnants. Which damage utensils is gistera, and the utensil whose handles have been removed. If it had been protrusions running out, any protrusion that can contain olives will transfer tumah via contract, and opposite that area transfer tumah via airspace. Any protrusion that cannot contain olives transfer tumah via contact, but opposite that area does not transfer tumah via airspace. If it was resting on its side like a katara, any protrusion that contains olives transfers tumah via contact. Opposite that area transfers tumah via airspace. Any protrusion that cannot contain olives transfers tumah via contact, but opposite that area does not contain tumah via airspace. The bottom of Rekorfian utensils and the bottom of city-on cups, even though they cannot stand without support, are tummy since they are initially made. Okay. An earthenware utensil that has three rims, if the inner one is higher, everything is tahor. If the outer one is higher, everything is tummy. If the middle one is higher, then everything from it and inward is tummy, while everything from in and outward is tahor. If they were even, Rabbi Yehuda says we divide the middle receptacle, where the sages say everything is tahor, and from which point do earthenware utensils contract tumah? From when they are fired in the kiln, and this is the completion of their manufacture. Okay.
Arachim.
Okay. Base. We do not make less than 4 intercalculated months in a year, and it does not appear correct to make more than 8. The two loaves are eaten not less than 2 days after baking, nor more than 2 or 3 days afterwards. The pan and bread are eaten not less than the pan and breads are eaten not less than 9 days after baking, not more than 11 days afterwards. And an infant is circumcised not less than 8 days old, not more than 12. We do not blow less than 21 trumpet blasts in the temple, nor than 48. We do not use less than 2 lyres, nor than 6. We do not use less than 2 flutes, no more than 12. On 12 days during the year, the flute plays before the altar, during the slaughtering of the first Pesach offering, and during the slaughtering of the second Pesach offering, and on the Yom Tov of Pesach and the Yom Tov of Shavuos, and on the 8 days of the festival. And he would not play a copper flute, but a reed flute, because Its sound is pleasant, and he would conclude with only a single flute, because it would make for a better close. If they were the slaves of the Kohanim, these are the words of Rameh. Roshi says they were the families of Beis Hapakerim and Beis Sephora, and from Imamim, from which Kohanim would marry. The Kenina Ben Tingla says they were Levites.
Okay.
Okay, test. One who aimed to kill an animal but killed an human, or who aimed to kill a Gentile but killed a Jew, or aimed to kill a premature baby but killed a viable one is exempt. If one aimed to strike him on his loins and the force of the blow was not sufficient to kill him at the spot, but it struck his chest where his force was sufficient to kill and he died, he's exempt. If he aimed to strike him on his chest and the blow contained sufficient force to kill on that spot, but it struck his loins where his force was insufficient to kill and he died, he is exempt. If an animal to strike an animal and the force was not sufficient to kill an adult, I'm sorry, I read wrong. If he aimed to strike an adult and the force was not sufficient to kill an adult, but he struck a child whom it is sufficient to kill and he died, he's exempt. If he aimed to strike a child and the force was sufficient to kill a child, but he struck an adult whom it was not sufficient to kill and he died, he's exempt. However, if he aimed to strike him on his loins and the force was sufficient to kill him at the spot, but he struck his chest and he died, he's liable. If he aimed to strike an adult and the force was sufficient to kill an adult, but he struck a child and he died, he is liable. But Shimon says even if he aimed to kill this one and he killed that one, it's exempt. If a murderer's identity was lost in a group, they're all exempt. Then Yehuda says we place them in a cell. Anytime people sentenced to execution become confused with one another, they are subjected to the most lenient one. If those sentenced to be stoned became confused with those sentenced to be burned, Reb Shimon says they are all executed by stoning, as burning is more severe. But the comments say they are executed by burning, as stoning is more severe. Reb Shimon says to them, if burning was not more severe, it would not have been meted out to the daughter of a Kohen who committed adultery. He said to him, if stoning were not more severe, it would not have been meted out to the blasphemer and the idolater. If those to be beheaded became confused with those to be strangled, Reb Shimon says they are executed by beheading, but the sages say they by strangulation. Okay.
One more.
And one who becomes liable to two forms of execution is subjected to the more severe form. If he committed a transgression which was punishable by two forms of execution, he is subjected to the more severe one. Rabbi Yossi says he is subjected to the one by which he was first enjoined.
Okay.
Sukkah. Hey, Gimel. From the worn-out trousers of the Kohanim and their belts, they made wicks and they would kindle them. This was not a courtyard. It was not a courtyard in Jerusalem that was not illuminated by the light of the base of Shemuel. The devout men and women of good deeds would dance before them with flaming torches that were in their hands and would utter before them words of song and praises, and Levim with harps, lyres, and cymbals, trumpets, and the countless musical instruments. I stood on the 15 steps that descend from the center of the court of Yerushalayim to the women's court, corresponding to the 15 songs of ascent and psalms. Upon them, the Levim would stand with musical instruments and chant songs, and two Kohanim stood at the upper gate that descends from the court of Yerushalayim to the women's court. The two trumpets in their hands, when the crier called out, they sounded the tekiah, teruah, tekiah. When they reached the 10th step, they would sound the tekiah, teruah, tekiah. When they reached the court, they sounded the tekiah, teruah, tekiah. When they continued sounding the tekiah until they reached the gate leading out to the east. When they reached the gate leading out to the east, they turned to the west and said, our forefathers who were in this place, their backs were toward the sanctuary and their faces toward the east, and they bowed eastward toward the sun. As for all of us, our eyes are toward Yah. They, Yehuda says they repeated and said, we are for Yah and we have our eyes. They make no fewer than 21 trumpet blasts in the temple and no more than 48 blasts. Every day there were 21 trumpet blasts in the temple, and there for the opening of the gates, 9 for the burnt offerings and 9 for the daily offering. Burnt offering, afternoon burnt offerings. For the Musaf offerings, they added another 9, and on the eve of the Sabbath, they added another 6. 3 to stop the people from work, and 3 to distinguish between the sacred and the secular. Okay. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And we have brachas. These are the points between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel concerning meals. Beit Shammai says one recites the blessing over the day and afterwards the blessing over the wine. Beit Hillel says one blessing over the wine and afterwards over the day. But Shammai says they wash their hands and afterwards mix the cup of wine, and Beit Hillel say they mix the cup and then wash their hands. Beit Shammai says one wipes his hands with a napkin and places on the table, and Beit Hillel says on the cushion.
Okay. Had cut.
Thank you. Okay.
Shkoyach.